Hi, I'm Oliver. For the longest time, I believed I was living the dream. A dream I had built with my wife, Liana. We met when we were young, full of hope and ambition. Together, we created a life that I thought was unbreakable. I loved her deeply, and I believed with all my heart that she loved me just as much. We were a team, facing the world together, sharing our victories and our struggles. I always believed that loyalty was the foundation of a strong marriage. Trust was something we didn't just have. We embodied it. Our bond was something I thought was solid, something that could withstand anything. But sometimes, late at night, I would wonder, could anything ever come between us? Could something shatter this perfect life we had built? I'd quickly brush those thoughts aside, reassuring myself that Liana was as committed to us as I was. But what if everything I believed in, everything I thought was true, suddenly fell apart? What if the person I trusted most in the world betrayed me? Looking back, I realized there were signs, small things I ignored because I didn't want to see them. I was too wrapped up in the life we had, too comfortable to consider that it could all come crashing down. This is my story, a story of love, of betrayal, and of finding my way back to myself. It all started with one unexpected revelation, one moment that changed everything I thought I knew. For a long time, life with Liana felt like a dream. We had what many people would consider the perfect marriage. We laughed together, planned our future together, and supported each other through thick and thin. There was a comfort in knowing that no matter what life threw our way, we had each other. Our days were filled with small moments of happiness that seemed insignificant at the time, but in hindsight meant everything. We'd have dinner together every night, sharing stories about our day. We took weekend trips, just the two of us, to escape the stress of everyday life. It was in those moments that I felt the most connected to her, as if nothing could ever come between us. But as much as I cherished those times, there were also fleeting moments of doubt, tiny cracks in the facade that I was too quick to dismiss. There would be times when she seemed distant, lost in her own thoughts. I'd ask if everything was okay, and she'd always smile and say it was. And I believed her because I wanted to believe her. After all, we had built this life together. Why would she ever want anything different? Still, those doubts lingered in the back of my mind. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting my insecurities get the better of me. Liana was my wife, my partner in everything. She would never do anything to hurt me. At least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I see now how much I took for granted, how I convinced myself that our marriage was immune to the struggles that so many others face. I was so focused on the life we had built, on the image of us as the perfect couple, that I ignored the small signs that something might be wrong. We had a routine, a rhythm to our life that felt safe and predictable. And in that routine, I found comfort. But comfort can be deceptive. It can lull you into a false sense of security, making you believe that nothing can touch you, that nothing can break what you have. I was wrong, very wrong. That sense of security, that illusion of a perfect life, was about to be shattered in a way I never saw coming. And when it did, it would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and myself. It's strange how life can change in an instant. One moment, everything seems normal, and the next, your world is turned upside down. For me, that moment came out of nowhere, unexpected and devastating. I was going about my day, not suspecting anything was wrong. I was running an errand, something as mundane as picking up groceries, when a stranger approached me. He looked hesitant, almost as if he wasn't sure whether to speak up or not. I remember the look on his face, a mix of pity and discomfort, as if he didn't want to be the one to say what he was about to say. He told me that he had seen Liana, my wife, with another man. At first, I didn't believe him. How could I? Liana was my wife, the person I trusted most in this world. The idea that she could be with someone else, it just didn't make sense. I remember standing there, feeling like I was in some sort of alternate reality, where nothing made sense and everything was out of place. My first reaction was denial. I wanted to believe that this man was mistaken, that he had somehow confused Liana with someone else. But as he described what he had seen, the details became too specific, too accurate to ignore. He described Liana's clothes, her mannerisms, even the way she smiled. It was her, and deep down, I knew it. Even as I listened to him, part of me was still trying to hold on to the belief that it couldn't be true. I asked him if he was sure, hoping for some sort of mistake, but he just nodded, his expression sad. He didn't want to hurt me, but he felt I needed to know. The ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just heard. 1,000 thoughts ran through my head, each one more painful than the last. Why would she do this? How long had it been going on? Was it something I did or didn't do? I wanted to run home, to confront her right then and there, but at the same time, I was terrified of what I might find out. I didn't want this to be real. I didn't want my life, our life, to be a lie. But no matter how much I wanted to deny it, the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. The rest of that day is a blur. I don't remember finishing my errands. I don't remember driving home. All I could think about was Liana, and the possibility that everything I believed about our marriage was a lie, that our life together wasn't as perfect as I had thought. It felt like the walls were closing in on me and there was no way out. I had to know the truth, but at the same time, I was terrified of what that truth would be. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, barely able to function, as the weight of what I had just learned bore down on me. I knew I had to confront Liana, but I also knew that once I did, there would be no going back. The illusion of our perfect life had been shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces, not knowing if I could ever put them back together again. I remember the moment I decided to confront Liana like it was yesterday. The air in our home felt thick, almost suffocating, as if it knew what was about to happen. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing the dread that was building inside me. The day had turned into night, and the darkness outside seemed to seep into the room, mirroring the darkness that was slowly enveloping my soul. Liana walked through the door, smiling at me like she always did, as if nothing was wrong. She looked so normal, so much like the woman I had loved for years. But now, everything about her seemed foreign, like I was looking at a stranger who held the power to destroy me with just a few words. As she set down her things, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The words were bubbling up inside me, threatening to explode. I could feel the tension in the room growing with each passing second. My hands were trembling, my throat dry as sandpaper. I tried to find the right words, but how do you ask the love of your life if she's been unfaithful? How do you shatter the illusion of everything you've ever believed in? Liana, I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up at me, her eyes full of concern, and for a moment I almost backed down. But the pain and anger boiling inside me wouldn't let me. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She frowned, the worry on her face deepening. "Of course, Oliver. What's wrong?" I felt a tear escape down my cheek, but I didn't bother to wipe it away. "Is there someone else? Liana, are you seeing someone else?" The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and threatening to burst. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. She didn't answer immediately, and in that moment, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. The truth was right there, staring me in the face, but I still wasn't ready to accept it. "Oliver," she started, her voice trembling. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and it took everything in me not to scream, to demand the truth right then and there. "I'm so sorry." Sorry? That single word hit me like a sledgehammer. It confirmed everything I feared, everything I didn't want to believe. My knees went weak, and I had to grab on to the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. The room was spinning, and it felt like the world was crashing down around me. "How could you?" I choked out, my voice breaking. "After everything we've been through, after everything we've built, how could you do this to us?" She was crying now, the tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't feel sympathy. I was too consumed by the pain, the betrayal, the overwhelming sense of loss. The woman I had devoted my life to, the woman I had trusted with every part of me, had destroyed it all. "I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed, trying to reach out to me, but I pulled away. Her touch felt like fire, burning me, reminding me of the trust she had broken. "Never meant to hurt me," I repeated, my voice rising with anger. "You didn't just hurt me, Liana. You destroyed me. You destroyed everything we had." I could see the regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Nothing could undo what she had done. The future I had envisioned, the life I thought we would share, was gone. The betrayal had cut so deep, I wasn't sure if I could ever recover. "I loved you," I whispered, the words feeling hollow as they left my lips. "I gave you everything, and you threw it all away. Why, Liana, why?" She tried to explain, to offer some justification, but I couldn't hear it. The pain was too much, the betrayal too great. Every word she spoke felt like another dagger in my heart, twisting and turning, leaving wounds that would never fully heal. In that moment, I realized that the Liana I had loved was gone. The woman standing in front of me was someone else, someone who had made choices that I couldn't understand, choices that had shattered our lives beyond repair. I didn't know what to do, where to go from here. The only thing I knew was that everything had changed, and there was no going back. The darkness of that night swallowed me whole, leaving me lost in a sea of pain and confusion. The life I knew was over, and I was left alone to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. After that night, everything in my life felt like it was unraveling. I couldn't escape the pain, the constant reminder that the woman I had devoted my life to had betrayed me in the most devastating way. But more than the pain, there was something even more insidious eating away at me: doubt. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop questioning myself. I replayed every moment of our marriage, every conversation, every decision, wondering where I had gone wrong. Was it something I said, something I didn't say? Was I not enough for her? These thoughts consumed me, day and night, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I'd look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. I saw a broken version of myself, someone who had failed in the most personal, intimate way possible. My self-esteem, once strong and secure, was crumbling into dust. I started to question everything about myself, my worth as a husband, as a man. If Liana could so easily replace me, what did that say about me? I began to internalize the betrayal, as if her actions were somehow a reflection of my own inadequacies. The confidence I once had was shattered. I started doubting my decisions, my judgment, and even my ability to see the truth. I kept asking myself, how could I have missed the signs? How could I have been so blind? It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that maybe I wasn't the man I thought I was. Maybe I wasn't good enough. These thoughts became a loop in my mind, playing over and over again until I couldn't escape them. Every little flaw, every mistake I'd ever made in our marriage seemed magnified 100-fold. Even the simplest things became a struggle. I'd go to work, but my mind wasn't there. I'd try to focus, to push the pain away, but it was like a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. I felt like I was living in a fog, disconnected from everything and everyone around me. And then there was the fear that this wasn't just a one-time thing. What if I was destined to be alone? What if I was unlovable? I started to believe that I didn't deserve love, that maybe Liana had seen something in me that I was too blind to see in myself, that I wasn't worthy of loyalty or commitment. These doubts began to seep into every aspect of my life. I stopped reaching out to friends, stopped doing the things I enjoyed. I withdrew into myself, ashamed of the man I had become. I was embarrassed to admit to anyone how much I was struggling, how deeply Liana's betrayal had cut me. I didn't want people to see how broken I was, how much of my identity had been wrapped up in being her husband. But the truth was, I felt lost. I didn't know who I was without her, without the life we had built together. The foundation of my world had crumbled, and I was left standing in the ruins, unsure of how to rebuild or even if I could. My confidence, my sense of self, had been shattered, and all that was left was a man struggling to find his way in the dark. I was haunted by the question, what if I'm not enough? It was a question I didn't have an answer to, and it terrified me. The man I used to be, the man who believed in love, in loyalty, seemed like a distant memory. I wasn't sure if I could ever find him again. After the initial shock and the endless spiral of self-doubt, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The question of whether to stay and try to salvage what was left of my marriage or to leave and start anew consumed me. It felt like I was being torn in two, with each option leading to a different kind of pain. On one hand, there was the life we had built together, the memories, the shared experiences, the love that had once been so strong. It was hard to let go of all that. I kept thinking about the vows we made, the promises to stand by each other for better or for worse. Was this the worse we were supposed to endure? Was I supposed to fight for our marriage, to forgive and try to move forward? But then, every time I looked at Liana, all I could see was her betrayal. The image of her with someone else haunted me, a constant reminder that the trust we had was shattered. How could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I ever trust her, knowing what she had done? I remember sitting in our living room, surrounded by the silence that now filled our home, and feeling utterly paralyzed. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, anything, that would make this decision easier, but nothing came. All I could do was think about the life we had and the life that could be, neither one offering any real comfort. If I stayed, I knew it would be a long, painful road to rebuilding what we had. I'd have to learn to forgive, to trust again, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to do that. But leaving felt like giving up on everything we had ever been. It felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that the love we had wasn't strong enough to survive this. I spent countless nights lying awake, weighing my options, trying to imagine what my life would look like either way. I'd think about the good times, the laughter, the closeness we once shared, and I'd feel a pang of guilt for even considering walking away. But then the anger would return, the hurt, and I'd find myself leaning toward leaving just to escape the pain. Friends and family offered advice, but their words only added to the confusion. Some told me to fight for my marriage, that every relationship has its challenges, and that love can conquer anything. Others urged me to leave, to find someone who would truly appreciate me and never betray me the way Liana had. Deep down, though, I knew this was a decision only I could make. No one else could truly understand the depth of our relationship, the history we shared, or the way her betrayal had torn me apart. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, with one step leading to a dark, uncertain future, and the other keeping me in a place of pain and mistrust. One night, as I sat alone in the dark, I realized that staying meant living with constant doubt, always wondering if I could ever fully trust her again. It meant questioning every smile, every touch, every word she said, and I knew that would slowly destroy me. On the other hand, leaving meant walking away from the life we had built, but it also meant giving myself a chance to heal, to find peace, and maybe even to start over. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, and it wasn't a decision that came easily, but in the end, I knew that staying would only prolong the pain, keeping me trapped in a cycle of mistrust and heartbreak. Leaving, as terrifying as it was, seemed like the only way to give myself a chance to heal, to rebuild my life on my terms. So, I made the decision to leave. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but deep down, I knew it was the right choice. I knew that staying would mean losing myself in the process, and I wasn't willing to do that. It was time to let go, to walk away from the life I thought I knew, and to start the painful but necessary journey of finding myself again. After I made the decision to leave, I found myself in a place I had never been before, completely alone. The life I had known was gone, and the future seemed like a vast, empty void. I was adrift, without any sense of direction or purpose. I knew I couldn't go through this alone, but reaching out for help felt like admitting weakness, something I wasn't used to doing. But the weight of everything I was carrying was too much for one person to bear. I needed to talk to someone, to share the burden of my pain, even if it meant exposing the raw, broken parts of myself. So, I reached out to a few close friends, men I trusted, men who had been there for me in different stages of my life. The first time I spoke about what had happened, it was like opening a floodgate. I didn't hold back. I told them everything: the betrayal, the doubts, the decision to leave. It was hard, harder than I expected to say the words out loud. But as I spoke, I felt a strange kind of relief, like I was finally letting go of some of the pain that had been consuming me. Their reactions were exactly what I needed. They listened without judgment, without trying to fix things or tell me what I should do. They simply listened, offering their support in the quiet, steady way that only true friends can. They didn't offer platitudes or try to downplay what I was going through. They acknowledged my pain, my anger, and my confusion, and in doing so, they validated everything I was feeling. There was something profoundly comforting in that. Just knowing that I wasn't alone, that there were people who cared about me, who were willing to stand by me through this, made all the difference. It didn't solve my problems or take away the pain, but it gave me the strength to keep going. We started meeting regularly, just a few guys sitting around, talking about life, work, and yes, sometimes about what had happened with Liana. These weren't deep, emotional conversations every time. Often, we'd just share a few beers, talk about the latest sports game, or reminisce about old times. But those moments of normalcy were exactly what I needed. Through these conversations, I realized how important it was to have that brotherhood, that sense of camaraderie. We weren't just talking about my situation. We were connecting on a level that went beyond words. These men who had known me for years reminded me of who I was before all of this. They helped me see that I was more than just the man who had been betrayed. I was still Oliver, still the person they respected and cared about. Their support became my lifeline. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, whenever the doubts and pain started to creep back in, I knew I could reach out to them. They were there to pull me back when I started to sink too deep into my own thoughts. They were there to remind me that I wasn't alone in this, that I didn't have to face it all by myself. And slowly, with their help, I started to rebuild. It wasn't just about getting through each day anymore. It was about finding myself again, reconnecting with the person I had been before the betrayal. I started to see that my worth wasn't tied to what had happened, that I could stand on my own, with or without Liana. These friendships, this brotherhood, gave me the strength to move forward. They showed me that even in the darkest times, there's light to be found in the people who stand by your side. They reminded me that I still had a life to live and that I didn't have to do it alone. And for that, I will always be grateful. The decision to leave and the support from my friends were just the beginning. What lay ahead was the long and difficult road to healing, a journey that would force me to confront my pain, my doubts, and ultimately rediscover who I was without Liana. At first, the days blurred together, each one a struggle to get through. The routine of everyday life felt hollow, like I was just going through the motions. But I knew I couldn't stay in that place forever. I had to find a way to move forward, to rebuild the pieces of myself that had been shattered. It started with small steps. I forced myself to get up every morning, to keep going to work, to do the things that needed to be done. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I just wanted to stay in bed, to shut out the world and drown in my own misery. But I didn't let myself give in to that. I knew that if I did, I might never find my way out. I started focusing on the things that had once brought me joy, things I had neglected during the turmoil of my marriage. I picked up old hobbies, like going for long runs in the early morning, letting the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement clear my mind. I started reading again, losing myself in books that transported me to another world, if only for a little while. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing process. At first, I was hesitant to go, thinking I could handle it on my own. But sitting in that room, talking to someone who didn't know me, who didn't have any preconceived notions about who I was or what I had been through, was liberating. My therapist helped me navigate the complex emotions I was experiencing: anger, sadness, confusion, and yes, even guilt. Through therapy, I began to understand that healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about acknowledging the pain, letting myself feel it, and then finding a way to move beyond it. I had to learn to forgive, not just Liana, but myself. I had to forgive myself for the doubts, for the times I felt weak or lost, and for not seeing what had been happening right in front of me. As the months passed, I began to notice small changes in myself. I started to feel a sense of peace, that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't constant, and there were still bad days, but they became less frequent. I began to see that my life wasn't defined by Liana's betrayal. I was more than that. I had value, worth, and the capacity for happiness, even if it was hard to believe at times. I also started to redefine what I wanted from life. For so long, my identity had been tied to being Liana's husband, to the life we had planned together. But now I had the opportunity to rediscover who I was on my own terms. I began setting new goals, both big and small. I focused on my career, taking on new challenges that pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I made an effort to reconnect with old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. One of the most important realizations I had during this time was that healing isn't a linear process. There were days when I felt strong, like I was finally moving forward, and then there were days when the pain would come crashing back down, reminding me of the wounds that were still healing. But each time, I got back up, determined to keep moving forward. I learned to be kinder to myself, to allow myself the space to feel whatever I needed to feel without judgment. I stopped expecting myself to be over it by a certain time. Instead, I embraced the journey no matter how long it took. And in that journey, I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had forgotten. I remembered what it felt like to laugh without reservation, to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, to feel a sense of accomplishment in my own achievements. I was rebuilding piece by piece, and with each step, I was becoming more whole. The road to healing was long and difficult, but it was also transformative. It taught me that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I had the ability to overcome even the darkest of times. And most importantly, it taught me that I could find happiness again, not in someone else, but within myself. As I continued on my journey of healing, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I had come a long way from the man who was shattered by betrayal, but there was still a part of me that remained guarded, hesitant to open myself up again. I wasn't sure if I was ready to let someone else into my life, to trust again, knowing how deeply I had been hurt before. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. I met Emma at a mutual friend's gathering. It was one of those events I almost didn't attend, feeling too tired and too disconnected to socialize. But something pushed me to go, and now looking back, I'm grateful that I did. Emma wasn't someone I immediately noticed in the crowd, but as the night went on, we ended up talking. Just casual, light conversation at first. There was something about her that felt different. She had a warmth, a genuine kindness in her eyes that made me feel at ease. We talked about everything and nothing, our favorite books, music, the small details of life that usually go unnoticed. It was easy, effortless, and for the first time in a long time, I found myself enjoying the moment without the shadow of my past looming over me. As the night came to an end, we exchanged numbers more out of politeness than anything else, or so I thought. But as the days went by, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wasn't sure if it was loneliness, a desire to fill the void that Liana had left, or if there was something more. Cautiously, I reached out, and we started seeing each other. At first, I was hesitant, constantly questioning my own motives. Was I ready for this? Was it fair to Emma, knowing that I still carried the scars of my past? But each time we met, my doubts slowly began to fade. Emma wasn't Liana, and this wasn't the same as before. This was new, uncharted territory, and I had to allow myself the space to explore it without the baggage of what had happened before. Emma had a way of making me feel safe, understood, Without ever prying into my past, she knew I had been through something painful, but she didn't push me to talk about it. Instead, she gave me the space to open up when I was ready, and that made all the difference. With her, I didn't feel the need to put on a brave face or pretend that I was completely healed. I could be myself, flaws, doubts, and all. One evening, as we sat together, talking late into the night, I realized something that took me by surprise. I wasn't just with Emma to escape my loneliness or to fill the gaps left by Liana. I genuinely enjoyed being with her. She made me laugh, made me think, and more than anything, she made me feel hopeful again. Hopeful that maybe, just maybe, I could find love again. But with that hope came fear. The fear of being hurt again, of opening myself up only to be betrayed once more. Trusting Emma meant letting go of the walls I had built around myself, and that was terrifying. I had to confront the reality that moving forward meant embracing vulnerability, and that wasn't something I could take lightly. Yet, Emma's patience and understanding gave me the courage to take that leap. Little by little, I let her in. I shared parts of my story, my fears, and my hopes for the future. She listened without judgment, offering her support in ways that were both gentle and unwavering. With Emma, I didn't feel rushed. I felt like I could take my time, that there was no pressure to be anyone other than who I was in that moment. As our relationship grew, I began to realize that this second chance wasn't just about finding love again. It was about discovering that I could be happy, that I could trust, and that I could build something new and meaningful without erasing the past. Emma wasn't a replacement for Liana, and what we had wasn't about filling a void. It was about starting something fresh, something that had the potential to be just as deep and just as real, but on entirely different terms. Meeting Emma showed me that even after the deepest pain, life has a way of offering us new beginnings. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened or pretending it didn't matter. It was about acknowledging that I had been hurt, that I had healed, and that I was ready to embrace whatever came next with an open heart and a cautious but hopeful spirit. This second chance was more than I could have ever expected. It wasn't just about love. It was about rediscovering my capacity for joy, trust, and connection. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly living again. As time went on, my relationship with Emma deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. What started as a cautious exploration turned into something real, something meaningful. The more time I spent with her, the more I realized that I was rediscovering not just love, but a sense of happiness and fulfillment that I thought I had lost forever. With Emma, I found a kind of peace that I hadn't known I needed. She brought a lightness into my life that I hadn't felt in years, a joy that was simple yet profound. It wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It was in the little things. The way she made me laugh when I least expected it, the comfort of her presence on a quiet evening, the way she listened and cared without needing to fix or change anything. Through Emma, I learned that love could be different, that it didn't have to be defined by what I had known before. This wasn't about comparing her to Liana or trying to replicate what I had lost. It was about embracing something new, something that was uniquely ours. And in doing so, I began to understand that love isn't a one-time thing. It's not something that only happens once, and if it's broken, it's gone forever. Love, I realized, is resilient. It can endure, evolve, and even be found again, in unexpected places. There were moments, of course, when my past would creep back in, when the old fears and doubts would resurface. But Emma had a way of grounding me, reminding me that the past didn't define our future. She helped me see that while my experiences with Liana had shaped me, they didn't have to control me. I could choose to move forward, to build something beautiful from the lessons I had learned. One day, as we were walking together in the park, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink, it hit me. I wasn't just happy, I was content. I felt a sense of completeness that I hadn't felt in a long time, a realization that I had found my way back to myself. And more than that, I had found someone who loved and accepted me for who I was, scars and all. In Emma, I found a partner, a friend, and a love that was built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. It wasn't about perfection or trying to live up to some ideal. It was about being real, being present, and embracing each day as it came. We didn't rush things. We let our relationship unfold naturally. And in that time, we created a bond that was strong because it was built on honesty and genuine care for one another. Looking back, I realized that my journey had brought me full circle. I had been broken, yes, but in that breaking, I had discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I had faced my darkest fears, and in doing so, I had emerged with a clearer understanding of who I was and what I wanted from life. I had learned that happiness isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you have to choose, to work for, and to nurture. And now, with Emma by my side, I felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. I didn't need to rush into anything or try to force a particular outcome. I was content to let things unfold in their own time, confident in the knowledge that I was capable of love, of trust, and of finding happiness again. This final resolution wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't matter. It was about integrating those experiences into who I had become, allowing them to inform my choices without dictating them. I had found love again, yes, but more importantly, I had found a renewed sense of self-worth and a belief in the possibility of a joyful, fulfilling life. In the end, I discovered that happiness isn't about having everything you want or avoiding all pain. It's about finding peace within yourself, appreciating the love you have, and choosing to live each day with an open heart. With Emma, I found a new love, but I also found a deeper, more enduring happiness, one that came from within and that I knew would carry me through whatever life had in store.